right, the lockdown, it took us a while. We're all of the older generation, but it's the Shapers in the house tonight. First off, all the way from Durban, we've got the main man, Uncle G from G-Force and Smith. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, guys. Nice to be involved.
Awesome. Then from just down the drag on the south coast, of course, a new brand on the block, but certainly not a new board shaper, Africa Surfboards, Gary van Wieringen. How are you, Gary?
How's it, gents? How you all doing?
Good, good.
And then, of course, from the west coast, often my partner in crime on the mic, but also a very experienced board shaper out of the Western Cape, Mr. Josias Dutchie Lowe.
Hello, everybody. Freezing down here today. Gary wouldn't survive this weather that's outside here now, bro.
Coming our way.
Coming soon. Open the flights, please.
So the good news is, of course, before we get into sort of shaping, is that, yes, there is a monster swell coming, but it's kind of been firing everywhere. This looks like it's been the best winter we're going to see in South Africa for quite a while coming out of the lockdown. Officially, we're still not supposed to be surfing, but I think everyone's just hoyed that one out the window. Dutchie, you've been doing some missions with your team riders, getting some footage, getting some content, no contests on, so it's kind of
no contest. Yeah, but it's been fun. It's been a lot of exploration. It's been it's a lot of been kind of also reset and thinking about brands. And I mean, we spend a lot of time at home on the internet and just chilling, and it was a good time to reflect, I think. So I think it's been a really good time for me, to be quite honest. Except for all the debt that I've incurred now.
Well, look, I'm sure everyone feels that boat. I'm certainly there with you.
Yeah.
Gary, on the south coast, I mean, you were saying it was quite slow, but, you know, obviously very stoked to be in. You've had a couple of orders. Obviously, on the nature side, you guys have got like a world phenomenon going on right now. There's firing waves and billions of sardines.
I'm stuck this thing of dad. No, just took this way.
Yeah, we had to worry about police. Now we got to worry about the star.
And then, G-Man, you're in Durban. Obviously, you must be happy to have your boy in country. It took him a while, coming all the way from Hawaii. But it looks like he's going full tilt there.
Well, he's been traveling up to Durban, you know, just getting some waves. We all know that the swells come through. And obviously, with the new brand dropping the website soon, Jordy's just been tweaking it and just making sure that we're ready to drop it in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So, yeah, I've been stoked to have him in town, and he's so stoked to be surfing the warm water, obviously. And every point's been cranking along south and north coast, as Gary will know. Lockdown, surf's up.
Now, Gary,
level 0.
Gary, let's talk about that south coast, because I've been seeing some clips dropping from various locations. I won't mention any names because I know some of the boys down there don't like the name drop. But I mean, you guys have been lucking out. The surf has been radically good.
Nice, good sand, eh? Really good sand. Yeah, enough waves, plenty waves. Yeah, it's been good medicine to get back in the water after being out of it for, I think I was 5 weeks, and then I started trying to surf. Yeah.
Now, Dutchman, we talk about the economy. Obviously, the economy is not great at the moment. I mean, everyone's feeling the pinch. Not great news out of Tito and Mboweni this week with the budget speech either. Pretty much just admitting that we're all in deep doo-doo and we're going to get highly taxed moving forward. I mean, as a surfboard manufacturer in South Africa, we look at a lot of product coming in from overseas before you even make the boards. I mean, you guys are obviously going to have to sort of explore every avenue you can now to make money out of surfboards.
Yeah, the hustle is definitely on. Especially the import on the products. These guys will know the plugs that's just going in the board for the fin plugs. It's absolutely ridiculous now. Just the import price on it, it's literally doubled in price. And there's so many components, surfboards, like the cloth and everything that's going to be coming in is just going to be more freighted, more taxed, like, so the surfboard build kind of industry has always been the creative industry as well. So, we've always kind of struggled to monetize it like the guys in Australia or America. We always say it's a passion project now, but now the gun's to the head, dude. It's on, it's getting really, really tough. And it's, and it's nice to have put in all these years now, and I'm starting to see where I can have a stand and not just quality, but also, like we can offer experience. And I think that's what's going to set us apart from the other guys,
Now, G, you've been in the game the longest here, and I mean, it's been a long time. You've worked overseas, you've worked locally, you've got brands that are going overseas. It's an interesting boat, because most South African surfers always, talk about how like expensive surfboards are. But if we look at some of the international brands coming in, especially, you look at some of the premium sort of product like Hayden. I mean, guys are paying 12,000 Rand for one of those surfboards, but then they'll get sort of iffy with a local shaper by charging 5,000 Rand. It's kind of a balance that needs to sort of equalize here in South Africa.
No, 100%. As I'll just touch on what Dutchie was saying, basically, with import of materials. What I see globally happening is that the cosmetics has really moved into play now with surfing, such as Hayden shapes or Dark Arts or what have you, doing all these full carbon Kevlar sandwich boards and that. And even for all of us manufacturing in South Africa, we're using the carbon, and we're using, for the tail patches and for underneath strength and what have you, black stringers and so forth. And as you said, the import of futures or FCS 2s, everything's, it's virtually 7% of the surfboard. And prior to that, it used to be 3% of the surfboard. So what we're having is exactly what Dutchie said, is that the cosmetics is changing the game now. And I think the hipster movement is coming, and that's what they kind of want. That's what they're looking at. It's not so much the high-end, high-performance surfboard that's really flying out of the door. It's definitely more volume, fishes, swallowtails, all sorts of funny little asymmetrical things are happening, different colors. So we see the trend really moving forward in that direction. But be as that may, I still feel it's going in the right direction for South Africans. I think we have great craftsmanship. Basically, all South Africans are hands-on. We're all hands-on. We all kind of can glass shape, spray or whatever. We've all been through the tricks of the trade. And that's, I'm excited. I just feel that we haven't really got the volume to support it. So we have to look offshore, and hence people are trying to capture an international brand to salvage themselves basically and get more product internationally, because we kind of like the China now. We speak English, we've got amazing waves, we've got past history, the Gunson 500 and what have you. So I think South Africa is basically a better manufacturing hub than what China is. It's just how to enhance it and how we can capture it and how we can get the movement offshore. That's my feeling basically.
Gary, we were talking yesterday, just briefly setting this up. And I mean, you were saying like, you've been in the industry a hell of a long time. I mean, started off as a glasser, moved on to shaping. You've now moved away from where you were and started your own brand, and basing out of your home there on the South Coast. But you're saying like, lockdowns affected you heavily. I mean, you've got to go fight with your landlords now. You haven't had the same income, but you've got to pay the rent. And it's a tough slog in South Africa and the surfing industry, where we're such a small little market. Like G's saying, is we've got that really high level of manufacturing, though. It's got to be on everyone's sort of table now, maybe, to really push South African surfboards, especially with what the exchange rate is now. I mean, we'd be pretty cheap for those overseas markets.
definitely. We all trying to fight for a small piece of the pie here at home. So to tap into the export market is definitely the way to go. I don't know how much export Graham's done lately, but I had heard that the freight freight in that was quite expensive at the moment with this whole Corona thing. I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, with the exchange rate and that, and if you're making a quality products, yeah, the best would be get overseas. Get the numbers overseas if you can.
Now, Gary, I mean, being a new sort of your own business now, looking at local market, I mean, if I look at all three of you guys, like the product that comes out of your factories is world class. I mean, I've ridden boards from all of you at some stage. I currently have one or two of Dutchies and G's. I'm hoping to get a Africa surfboard at some point this year. It amazes me that in South Africa, where we sort of are so far away from sort of everyone else, that we always seem to be in the shaping game right up there with the rest of the world as far as technology is concerned. You know, whether it was epoxy, I mean, epoxy boards here in South Africa were ahead of the curve, I feel like quite ahead of some of the first world countries.
Who are you talking to me?
Well, anyone.
Anyone. Yeah, dude, I think also because I mean, we've actually got South African surfers riding G's boards, my boards, Gary's boards, and the fact that our guys are performing on that level as well just means our Formula One cars are just as in tune. Like you said, our quality's top notch. We're just sitting in a really like isolated. Remember, we're very far away from the rest of the world. You know, we're pretty much the furthest away from Hawaii and America as you can get. The guys are scared to travel to Africa, but I do think we can get our boards out there. But I want to touch on what Gary said as well. Like we seem very appealing in price with the rand, and as you start structuring the deal, you start getting those freight costs in, and the guys just like back off. You know, the freight thing is just like the import of the products has actually escalated. It's I mean, there's less boats moving, there's less freight, there's no air freight, there's so many things, so there's less movement, so the price has just gone up. You know, you can see it in any airline ticket. So the freight this week there was 3 of these potential export orders has just literally backed off, and purely because of the freight aspect.
Now, G, I mean, with Smith doing big things already in the international market, you guys have got riders in Hawaii, Australia, all over the show. The flip side of that coin is doing what a lot of the international brands have done with local shapers, coming in and being done under license. You've kind of started with that process straight off the bat with Smith. You've got guys making boards. I know Sarah and Maddie are in Australia. You're not having to ship boards. Those boards are being made in Australia.
No, 100%. That's kind of like another venture that Geordie wanted me to go down, is moving our business model into Europe, into Australia, into America, you know, and from there, hopefully Japan. And as Dutchie elaborated on air freight or sea freight or whatever, all those costs have really escalated, you know, out of our reach, basically. You know, I just investigated today to try to send a couple of boards to San Francisco. It's probably like 30, it's not many boards, but it still came out at about $172 a board. I mean, it's outrageous. And I'm saying, he's going, oh my goodness, you know. So there's no more margin. There's no margin there. So we're going to have to venture out and try and have a licensee, royalty-based business model that's going to suit the manufacturers in South Africa for some time. And I'm just very fortunate that we have Geordie. You know, he's definitely a key player. That marquee athlete, him and Matt, have definitely pushed great boundaries for us. Otherwise, we would also be stuck in the same boat, I think. You know, it's just very fortunate for me. That's basically what it is.
Well, I mean, and then we talk about, you know, surfers. Obviously, surfers are important to the process of making boards and that feedback. Gary, I mean, you're one of your own biggest feedback. I mean, you still compete vociferously in your age group at the SA contests, and you're still one of the standouts down there on the South Coast and on the good days. I mean, how important is it to have that feedback from sort of the best surfers in the world?
Oh, definitely. Positive feedback, any feedback, negative feedback, that's all good. Good for the product. Challenge yourself as a shaper. Yeah, that's always great, eh? And I mean, I was someone that only started giving feedback later on in my career, you know, because I still was trying to learn and understand everything. And now having surfed and competed for so long and now shaping as well, so it's become a whole nice round circle with everything, which I'm really enjoying. Yeah, it's great. It's a good laugh.
Now, Dutch, I mean, you've been doing a lot of work with one of our top sort of QS contenders in Aidan Mason camp, and obviously seeing some clips the last few weeks coming out of the West Coast, and that with no competition surfing, we touched on it briefly, sort of the focus is really going online right now. And what I said in a couple of interviews back with a lot of the guys pre-surfing in South Africa was that I thought our guys were really at a disadvantage. Obviously, Matty McGillivray on G's boards with a big advantage being in Australia and able to surf through that. But pretty much as soon as you could, you were out the gates with videographer and photographer in hand, trying to get the clips.
We try, yeah, we were trying to actually beat that, that starting line. We try to get out before that with these official documents. You know, we're begging for us to because you could produce content already and things like that from the film side of things. So yeah, literally it's weird. Your entire strategy for the year changed. I've got a thing pinned up on my board where we were actually had the boards planned out from Belito and then onto Brazil. And this, you know, we were actually planning the whole year of what sort of boards you're working towards. Like those events in Pantene in Spain, you go left on your backhand. So we've got to get a really good backhand board and stuff. And all that stuff's out the window. All of a sudden, we like, what music's going to be in your movie? Who's editing it? Like the whole thing's changed. It's so crazy. It's like everything we know is like flip side, you know? And we're just trying to, I think we're just trying to guide these kids. They're kids, dude. They have no disrespect to Aidan, but he's a kid. He's still learning about life. It's a big monstrous world out there. And, you know, we've got to guide our surfers. We've got to guide these things. And I mean, I don't know about these things, and we're just trying to help as much as possible in the process so that this time that's spent now to gather all this footage, that it's not like a bad product coming out. It must really actually shock the world, you know, that the barrels that you'll see on the West Coast are gonna, I mean, you saw Duckie's barrel this week. You're going to see crazy things, you know, and we're really trying to push that as well onto the international platform. I mean, these guys like Jose and Aidan, they 4 years ago, they were standing in a picture with Ethan Osborne and Ethan Ewing and Griffin Calapinto and Seth Moniz. Why are South Africans always slipping in the cracks, you know, because it's so damn hard. Like it's a struggle. But I think, as Jordy said in the first podcast, it's maybe, you know, we got to get these kids hungry, you know. There's hungrier surfers than them on tour. So maybe it's a good thing this whole thing has happened, you know.
Now, G, I mean, looking at sort of how you guys have started with Smith, and I mean, it's gaining traction and momentum really fast. Like you said, obviously having Jordy is a massive asset. You're talking one of the biggest 3 surfers on planet Earth. He's got a mammoth following. I mean, even when we talk amongst the other pro surfers, you know, they look up to Jordy. And it's interesting looking at the year, because I look at my calendar today and we should all be sitting on Willard's Beach in Belito, which is always a mammoth event for the year. And I mean, you guys are always there. Jordy's always got the flat right there on the beach at the contest site. It's a super weird scenario this year because there's Belito not happening. Dutchie and I were laughing because I've got the J-Bay Open top on. He had the vest on the wall behind him. How do we sort of go from here? Because our the time of year when the whole world's focus is on us on the contest calendar, now it's not. No one's looking.
Yeah, no, I think that for all the WCT competitors and possibly the top end of the QS surfers, obviously they wanted to show their piece and strut around like a peacock and rip, tear, and slash, you know, in a sense. But for Geordie and them, they're quite relieved that they've got a bit of a break, you know. It's just, he's been 13 years on that suitcase, back, forth, and everything. You know, Kelly, everyone's done the same thing for many years. So he was quite, he's quite happy that he's just had a bit of rest, you know. A lot has changed, as Dutchie said, with all the Grobs trying to get sponsorship and money together, and boards are changing, developing for boards that are A for forehand, B for beach break, C for going left. It's a lot of work, you know, that you got to get together for all these kids to get the right board, the right location, you know, the right timing, high tide, low tide. So it is difficult for them, but for Geordie and for I think a lot of the rest of the guys, they're just really happy. They've got a bit of free time, I think, you know, and just to develop. And that's what's been, I've been so stoked having Geordie in Durban. We're working on more models and tweaking things, and, you know, the machines have done amazing things for us because there's no more donkey work, pulling out the planer and milling away all day and night, you know. You can cut 10 to 20 profiles, you know, so easy, you know, on the CNC machines today. So that's what's been a blessing for me, I think, with on the shaping side, and having Geordie, for that matter, just being able to hang at the factory and start developing stuff, you know, and just rest, you know. Rest is, none of those had much rest. I'm sure Dutchie will understand. Aiden and them were running all over the show. Everyone's been running all over.
They're hard work, huh? They're hard work.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the CNC machine, because obviously the game has changed, and you know, you talk about that like donkey work and how much the industry's changed. It's interesting because obviously the shaping side with the machine has become so much easier. But Gary, one of the key things about board manufacture is glassing, and it's something you know very well. I know G does as well, and Dutchie. You guys have all had your own hand in it. But I mean, Gary, one thing that hasn't been made easier is still glassing. I mean, glassing, and it's so important to a good surfboard, but no one's making that easier for you.
No, for sure. Still a back-breaking job, eh? Yeah. Yeah, even with the advent of the sun cure and that, it's still a very labor-intensive job, the glassing. I'm sure guys have thought of all sorts of little tricks to make it easier, but I don't think it's possible with that part of the process. Yeah, it's a back-breaking job, glassing.
Also pretty heavy on the old lungs and nasal passages as well.
If you've got good extraction, a good mask, you're right, eh?
Now,
everyone loves this stuff.
Obviously, one thing, you know, we often don't talk about when we're talking boards, and it's interesting because I was chatting to Mikhail, who works with G, yesterday about a couple of boards and things going on, and he was talking about like how important artwork actually is on a surfboard. And I mean, obviously the first thing you look at a surfboard is functionality and, you know, the strength and the performance of the board, but it is an art. And I mean, you studied graphic design, so it's something you've always prided yourself on. Yeah. How much of a difference does sort of putting good artwork on a surfboard make it easier to see?
I love this question. I really do love this question, because G said earlier about the hipsters and the aesthetics and things like that. There's so much of our hard work that's overlooked. I mean, guys would, you know, sometimes it's the guy's first surfboard and stuff, or he's getting a board for his chick or something, and they will go so towards the end of the earth, they throw the kitchen sink at it, and it's so time consuming. It's literally art. You go and commission an artist to go and put exactly what they ask you to put on that surfboard, and let's see what the invoice comes out after that, you know. And it's like, I just want to always teach the people, like, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit though, because the emphasis is about the surfboard. It's supposed to be providing the surfer, you know. It's about the functionality of it, you know. But then to a great deal of it, you've got to complement your own product as well with design, with artwork. and that gives the individual touch to our products, you know. So it's a very, very important thing, and especially now with social media, with marketing. I mean, this is where you put on your big boy pants, you know, because you can make the best surfboard in the world, but if you can't market it well either, you're going to miss all these clientele, you know. So art and design is really, really an important part of it, but it shouldn't be everything, you know. I think it's a very small demographic of surfers that can actually really feel a surfboard and how the performance benefits change, you know. So it's a big market of surfboards, you know.
And G, I mean, I know for a fact that you like spending time in the spray booth.
No, 100%. You know, I think the spray booth it's the creative side, as Dutchie was saying, and that's what really takes time. And it has got to where it is a cosmetic function, because everyone comes in and they bring their little cutout picture. This is what I want, and it's like, you know, like, this is going to take like 5 hours, dude. This is what you say. And this and that, you know, and then freaking hell, you know. So I just, it's so time consuming, you know, as Dutchie says, and they don't really appreciate the effort that goes into it. And we know, because we've done so many different sprays, what the end result's going to look like. Thank God we know. Otherwise, it would. You know? But yeah, it's definitely can hold you down to spending a lot of time cutting out, spraying, and cutting, all that stuff.
Now, we talk about time consuming. I think before we run out of time, one of the other things I think most shapers deal with, and it's quite time consuming, Gary, is that you get a lot of groms coming to you wanting to be sponsored. And I know a lot of the groms watch the show, and obviously, you know, Dutchie and I work with the juniors a lot. I mean, so all the groms in South Africa can actually understand what's going through your mind as a board manufacturer. What are you looking for when a kid comes to you and wants to ride your boards and maybe not get free boards, but get that deal and be on your team?
Well, that goes back to sort of to get them hungry. So make them work for it. It's not them the plates, you know. You must got to make them work for it. I think that's what you got to do right from the beginning. Make them hungry right from the beginning. Just, you know, I think they all used to getting it too easy, you know. So get that hunger going by just there it is. Come, what are you going to do to get it? What do you do to get it? And then check the progress coming, and then you reward. You know. And that's life really as well, you know. You've got to work hard first. Never comes easy.
And Dutchie, I mean, I like what Gary's saying. Is almost like you want to incentivize them, like dangle the carrots.
Yeah, you know me. Me being Afrikaans, I'm quite a conservative person actually, and that's like Gary said. I was brought up to, did you work for stuff? We all kind of blue collar guys. We work really hard. We got our hands on. And it's so important to instill that in the kids, you know. And our modern world, it kind of just washes over them, the respect, the why you have to do that. I mean, their bums got buttered from when they were born now these days, you know. So it is rare, but you do find those kids. And like, you know, when you see them, when they want that, you know, they'll present themselves when they're worthy of that sponsor, you know.
And gee, I mean, you've got probably one of the biggest junior teams in the country right now. A lot of them doing very well, obviously, and you know, I think about like Luke Thompson and Luke Slappen, you know, top boys in their age groups and going out there. What are your thoughts, and when you're like looking at these juniors, and how do you decide who you want on your team?
Well, basically, they've all kind of developed. All those guys have been in the water 10 years old. They're really a second generation, you know, and that's what's key to it. Is Geordie's always telling me, you know, like, your dad was a lifesaver, Dad, and I was a surfer, and now Geordie's a surfer. So there's 3 generations, or if there's 2 generations. We see a first generation family. It's not really happening because the parent doesn't really know what's going on. It's not really behind it all. You just end up being a giver. You know, if you've got a good heart, you feel sorry for the person, you end up giving the kid or something. On my side, I kind of look and just see their technique and how they're developing, I think, because they're not going to sell us any more boards, because if it's a 12-year-old, there's only 5 12-year-old surfers. You know, so there's no real market strategy for us to develop a young kid. So we've just been very fortunate to pluck out the guys that have really developed themselves, and their parents have supported them, and we're picking them up at a lot older age, you know, not so young. So it's not that bad, but picking up a young little kid like little Car Hall, you know what I'm saying, and he's done his thing and we've helped him a lot. They're a different story. It's quite a sad story what's gone down with Luke's, also one of the sad stories. So those are the kind of kids we looked at to try and work through and develop, you know. It's been very fortunate for us because the kids have paid attention. They're all working for it, like both what Dutchie and Gary said. They've got to show some passion. They've got to have a bit of finesse in themselves, manners, morals, all these sort of things, you know, and that's key as well.
Now, Gary, just to finish off, the last question for all three, but I'll start with you, is why should South African surfers support South African shapers? Put you on the spot there.
Well, they're going to have to. They're going to have to now. Those other boards are going to cost too much. Yeah. It's just the way the crazes go, you know. The top guys riding the flashy new model, or it's how it goes. But I think with what's happened now with this, there will be a lot more surfers buying more South African made boards. Yeah.
Dutchie?
They should ride them because they're so damn good, dude. I mean, why is Mayhem different to me or G? Why is, I mean, I'd say El Murray kind of got lucky with Tom Curran and Davey Smith, you know, back in the day, you know, and they just happened to have 30 world titles or something stupid like that. But I mean, like, those were the local guys at their spots, you know. They were, you know, and their community in Santa Barbara supported them. They started getting good surfers. And the history of Channel Islands is the history of Channel Islands. And I mean, why couldn't it happen to us? Why can't a good shaper come from Bloberg Strand or the South Coast or from Durban, you know? We're very closed off to the world, and I really feel it's time for us to break out, you know? And I'm very fronting for that.
And G, just to finish?
Yeah, no, I really feel that the South African market, we will always have a kid looking at an international brand. It's just how it is. Globally, it's a global trend for people to want to ride something different. Kids in Australia are riding boards out of America. Guys in Brazil are riding boards out of Australia. I mean, that's a fact. I just think that we have to, our emphasis must be to try and capture what's going on abroad, what's happening internationally, and try and gather that experience or gather the trend that's happening there and bring it back to South Africa, because we have the tradesmen. We can do it. We can turn it around quite easily. You know, we have passion, we have finesse in what we do. And that's the most important thing, is that, like, you've got Gary still surfing well, Dutchie's doing his thing. I'm still, you know, messing around in the water. We've got team riders and that. So we can put it together. Sure, our product's good. But I just think that we definitely have to see what's going on and bring what's happening internationally to our shores in South Africa. That's the difference. You know, we have to continue striving to keep up with international standards. And that's what will keep the kids in our product.
Awesome, boys. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, the first edition with the Shapers. And good to have the three of you, and good to see the three of you. I hope we get to share some waves soon. And obviously, if you watch the podcast and you enjoy what you see, remember the link is below. You can order those Captain Kai hoodies, caps, and beanies, and help keep the podcast alive, and myself.